The Patrick Ta eyeshadow duos, they're gonna cost $42 each. I need to know why these duos are $42. Like, I gotta hear something.
There has been a lot of conversation around my eyeshadow duos and the pricing, so I wanted to get on here and just talk about the formula. The eyeshadows in these duos are not your normal eyeshadows. These are not a pressed formula. These are not a cream. These are what you call a slurry. I have yet to be able to find a pearl that looks like this, applies like this, and will stay like this when you put it onto your eyes. You can
Come in. Ugh, you're not my grinder hookup. He canceled. Too fat, too femme. But I was just reading some poetry. You heard about that. Okay, so you know that I have them. And you're expecting a review. I mean, everyone's already said what they need to say about it. You don't need to hear what I have to say. I guess if that's what you want. I mean, I guess I'll come to you. You could just come sit down. You don't want to sit down. Fine, I'll come to you, I guess. I'm willing to stop poetry time for some, but I'm not willing to stop reading Marina Diamante's seminal work, Eat the World. I mean, I'm not going to stop reading Julia Hungry by Hannah Louise Poston for just anyone. It's like everything is not as it seems, as Selena Gomez once said. Can I implore you to just take a... Can you come sit down? I can't do this review just standing. We can sit on the comfy chairs. I'll move Molly and the pillow for you. Does that sound good? Since you're being so absolutely annoying, I guess I will just review them so I can get you out of here before he actually arrives, because I'm holding out hope, because you can't run a YouTube channel without hope. I bought 3 of the Patrick Ta eyeshadows, and I'm sure they have some stupid longer name that I'm not remembering off the top of my head, but that wasn't my intention. My intention was not to buy these, as you know. In Critical Sass, I said, how dare you, Patrick Ta? How dare you charge us $42 US for these eyeshadow duos that I'm sure aren't even going to be very good? Then some time passed, and I said, well, maybe I'll buy one and I'll tell you about it. And it could be like our fun little secret. Like, I'll try it and I'll be like, oh, they're so not worth it. Like, don't even buy it. Like, it's so stupid. Why would you even buy this? It's like really bad, actually. Don't even buy it. I thought, well, maybe I'll buy the 2 eyeshadows that I wanted to make a point, because I have a lot of things to say that I will say in this review, but not currently, but later. And so you're probably wondering how I ended up with 3. I was never going to pay $42 for one of these eyeshadows. I was either going to wait for the Sephora sale, or because I'm a licensed esthetician and Patrick Ta has a pro program, I applied to it because I'm a little minx and I like to do things that other people can't do and I like to get a deal. So I went to his website and I applied, and I lied. I don't work in the media industry really at all. And he gave me the discount anyway. He being some person, I don't know. I don't even know if Patrick Todd knows that I'm part of his pro program, but now he does. He's probably going to cancel it. But that doesn't matter to me, Patrick. What matters to me is that I got you. You can take me off that list. You can make sure I never save $1 buying your makeup again, but I won't ever buy your makeup again, probably. I probably will, but I don't need your stupid pro discount. The pro discount, my friends, is 30% off. I added the 2 that I wanted to my cart, or so I thought. I am fairly certain that I added the correct colors. Patrick Ta's website believes that that is not what happened. So I accidentally added the wrong thing to my cart and I checked out. And I immediately emailed customer service and said, I didn't mean to buy that shade, but the thing was, on their website, that shade was not listed as a shade. It wasn't next to the name of the product in my email. It just was shadeless. But all of the other ones had shade names next to them. So I wasn't even sure that I bought the wrong thing, but customer service assured me, you stupid dumb fat, you did buy the wrong thing. It was not our fault. It was all your fault, and as always was your fault. They said, wait till it comes, and then you can return it if you're not satisfied. Then I had to place a second order and not save any money to buy the one I originally wanted that I didn't buy in the first order, because now I was buying 3 of them. I didn't need to buy 3 of them. And you're probably saying, couldn't you have just waited for the correct one to come in and shipped back the one that you didn't want? Why are there still 3? I'll tell you why there's still 3. I'm gonna show you what happened the day that the first 2 arrived to my home. This is the one that I bought on accident, and I thought I was buying the correct color. This is one that I intended on buying, and you can just tell in the pan that the type of sparkle that they're providing is like different, and I feel like based on what I saw, like that wasn't made very clear that the sparkle types were different. I'm so tempted to touch this. I don't know why I was so upset about this, but like it's so different. I caved and I swatched it. This is so first impressions. Like I haven't even put them on my eyes. They don't even look like the same product. I have found that this lighting, which is so strange because it's in my kitchen, and it's bad lighting for everything else, but it's really good for sparkle. They don't even look like they're the same thing. Excuse the trash. I just opened this. It's election day. For fucking give me, okay? Damn. As you can see, I was a bit confused, a bit miffed. I got caught. These eyeshadow formulas are not the same. Just like the books at the beginning of this video were not the same. Are you paying attention? Keep your eyes open. So here my dumbass is with 3 of these dumbass eyeshadows that I have to freaking review for you because I bought them in order to review, and now I have to review them, and we're going to talk about them. So let's get into it. The 3 that I purchased were Do You Know Who I Am?, Talk to My Team, and Still at the Club. The 2 that I initially wanted to buy were Still at the Club and Talk to My Team. Let's review what I had an issue with this release. I could play the part of critical sass again, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to get you caught up to speed. My issue with these duos is that they're duos, and I don't like duos of anything. Patrick Ta's thing is kind of like duos, and that seems fairly pointless to me. In the case of the blushes or the bronzers, you probably will like the color of one more than the other, and you're probably going to be more likely to reach for that product just for that one color in that duo. And that's also going to apply to these eyeshadows. I love a beautiful, sparkly single eyeshadow that comes in its own compact, but the way that he set these up is that in order to get the 2 shades that I wanted, had to buy 2 of them. And I had to pay $84 for that, where he could have just priced them at $30 in single compacts, and I wouldn't have had as much of an issue with that. That's still expensive, but I would have paid $60 as opposed to $84. Now, of course, I cheated the system, and I didn't pay $42 for any of them. I think with the discount, they ended up being a little bit under $30, which obviously makes it much more digestible. It's like $15 an eyeshadow, and there are certainly some indie brands that charge $15 for special eyeshadows as singles, and like that's not that bad, but whenever they're sold as singles, I get to buy the ones that I want. And I wasn't able to do that. I just had to pay for an excess of eyeshadow and an excess of packaging. I didn't want all of it. I just wanted some of it. And then the secret third thing that happened was that the gold one that I accidentally got that I didn't want at all just looked different in the pan, and then I had to swatch it and prove to myself that the formulas were different. And that's where we are, because I feel as though Patrick Ta sold these eyeshadows as every eyeshadow was the same formula. And I think just from the beginning of this video, in the little bit that I showed you, you can tell that they aren't. If a Patrick Ta had sold these as single eyeshadows and told us that there were multiple finishes and labeled the finishes as such, I feel as though we wouldn't feel so duped by these and wouldn't have had the issue with the price point. I get it. You're trying to explain your price point to us and be like, these are the pearls that I swam to the bottom of the ocean to get and save you from ugly eyeshadow or whatever. I don't care about that. And another issue I have, they do give you a generous amount of product in here. There's 4 grams of product, so 2 grams an eyeshadow. For a point of reference, the old Natasha Denona eyeshadow palettes with the larger pans in it, the ones that cost $129, those also had 2 grams of product per pan. That's a lot of product per pan. And most of us, I don't think, need 2 grams of product per pan, but especially if you are in the world that we are in, and you are someone who has a lot of makeup, which a lot of you who watch my channel are. That's not saying all of you are, but a lot of you who watch my channel are people who are very into makeup and have a lot of makeup already. I think if you're looking for a unique shade of eyeshadow, you do not need it to have 2 grams of product. So he could have cut it to 1 gram of product per shade or 1.5 grams. So gave us a little bit less product and sold it for a little bit less. I didn't need 4 grams of eyeshadow. I would just like to have more eyeshadow for less. Color-wise, I would have loved to have been able to buy 4 eyeshadows, even if they were still in duos, for not $84. You could have given me a little less eyeshadow, and I think I would have appreciated that. Not only that, the only time this argument ever comes up where price per gram matters to people is whenever something expensive gets released and people are trying to justify the price of it. And I think using Viseart as like a kind of a case study here is a really good idea. So whenever I got into the makeup world, Viseart was very popular. They had these $80 pro pans, and I think that those were also 2 grams per shade. People complained about the cost of those shadows all the time. It's like, is $80 worth it? And $80 is going to be worth it for some people, but it's not going to be worth it for other people. And that's the case for any makeup product, by the way. It really does boil down to how much are you personally willing to spend. But something that Viseart did relatively recently, but also over time, it started releasing color stories with eyeshadow pans that are much smaller than 2 grams, and created color stories and released their pro pan color stories in that smaller pan size, and they were able to sell it for half the cost. And people found that much more digestible, and people were like, yeah, Viseart, that was a really great move. Not very many people are hitting pan on a lot of their eyeshadows with even 1 gram of product in it, let alone 2 grams of product in it. So I'm just saying it's something to consider. It's always used as a point to justify having a lot of product. So yeah, maybe price per gram, it's not that bad, but it's also just like, I didn't want to spend $42 on a eyeshadow duo. I think a lot of you didn't want to either. And like, that's why we were outraged by the price. Of course, a lot of us who complained about the price also still have 1 or more of these in our hands because of curiosity always kills the cat. I got these before they were in store, or when I swatched them in store, and then I probably wouldn't have bought them. And that's not because I don't think they're good. Certainly didn't need 3 of them. I hate this packaging, and it's not because it's shiny and my fingerprints are all over it. I actually really just hate it because of how it opens. And I actually think that his blushes and bronzers open this way as well. The bigger part of the component is the lid. So there's this latch that goes over top of the bottom, and it makes no sense. And I'm wondering if he did it this way because it's kind of similar to Tom Ford packaging. In the Tom Ford quads, it's exactly the opposite, where that little ledge is the bottom part of the product, and you open it up and like the mirror's on the smaller part of the component, and then you have that little ledge. It is a clasp component as well. It's not magnet, and it's not super weighty or anything. There's nothing particularly luxurious about the packaging beyond the fact that it is this kind of beautiful rose gold color. Also, we could have saved some money. We didn't need a mirror in this. I would never do my makeup in this mirror. I know that some people would maybe use a mirror this small to touch up on the go, but even if I was on the go, if I was like carrying my powder and then the eyeshadows, which I think, who's touching up eyeshadow on the go? I know someone's in my comment section right now like starting to type a sentence where like, I touch up my eyeshadow all the time, and I would use that mirror. I think if they didn't have the mirror in it, no one would complain. And that also could have cut costs and made it feel a little more reasonably priced. I don't like the shape of these. They're too big. I understand that everyone stores their makeup differently, but I have a little thing in my drawer that holds my single eyeshadows, and they each have their own little slot. This is too tall for the drawer that I use, and it will hit the top of the drawer and the drawer won't close. So then I have to store them sideways, but they're too long when you try to turn them sideways to fit in the component anymore. So if I keep 1 or more of these, then I'm going to have to figure out how I would store them and still think to use them. That's a me complaint. And listen, I know that I'm supposed to be like reviewing for the general audience and like what you might experience. I'm just telling you that I don't like the shape of these. They're tall and skinny. Almost nothing else in my makeup collection is shaped this way. When it comes to single shadows or shadow duos, it's just like, it's so inconvenient in so many ways. Let's start with the duo that I got more recently, the one that I have on my eyes today, but I'm wearing glasses and I'm in a different lighting situation, so you probably can't see it. This has 2 brownie eyeshadows. The bottom shade is like this warm brown with some different shades of sparkle. And then on the top, we have this minky shade, which I think is the shade that most people, at least in my circle, were excited about, was this top shade here. We love a taupe in my corner of the internet. And this was the one that initially caught my eye, but the reason I was so frustrated was that I didn't want the bottom shade. And honestly, as I have it in my hands, that remains to be true. I like the top shade. I don't like the bottom shade, but I do like them combined because it ends up reminding me of a lot of eyeshadows that I already own. Here's the thing that I always say is we tend to buy the same shades of stuff. I will be showing you some shades that I have that I think are similar, but knowing now that I have in the club in my hands, would I still have bought it, like knowing what I know now? Probably not, because it's like a lot of other eyeshadow shades that I really enjoy. When it comes to this duo, it's not that I think either one of these formulas is bad. I quite like the top shadow, but it's not providing me anything that I feel like any brand that has released this kind of like taupey, warm base silver topper thing. I don't think that these formulas are actually that revolutionary. They are like baked, dry, shimmery shades. If you've ever tried some of the Pat McGrath formulas, the old baked formula that they don't really seem to do anymore with the 4 shades on the side. I'm not saying it's exactly like that, but if you've ever felt like the texture of those, it's a little bit creamier than that, but it is like a similar vibe to that sort of thing. It's also kind of similar in texture to the eyeshadows from Chantecaille, which are also very expensive eyeshadows as well, and that I think a lot of people give pushback on how expensive they are. It's not like that Patrick Ta is unique in providing an experience where like people are like, that's a very expensive eyeshadow. It's just that I don't feel like we're treading anything new here. I don't think that this is more sparkly than my taupes. If it is more sparkly than my taupes, I have other silver topper shades that I could use to add to the top of my taupes to give it more of a sheen. I also will only probably use the top shade more, or if I am using the bottom shade, I'm going to use it as a base for the top shade because I think that they look really pretty together. In my experience, of the 3 duos that I bought, this is the only formula where that makes sense. And I also remember seeing Patrick Ta kind of selling them as you use the darker one as a base and the lighter one on top. But this is the only duo that I have where the shadows have a bit of a base pigment. Specifically, the bottom one is the only one of the 6 shades I got to try that has a strong pigment to it. Everything else is more of a topper. And therein lies another problem that I kind of mentioned earlier, is that that is not the sparkly kind of topper situation that you were selling them as. Everything I saw leading up to the release had been like, oh, the sparkly toppers of your dreams. And if you do really sheer it out, you could get like kind of just sparkle. But like, I don't think that's the nature of the eyeshadow. I don't think it wants to be sheer. I feel like if you go back and look at the promo shots in the TikToks, you're going to see that they all kind of look like they're the same formula, but they're not. Like, this duo has 2 different types of things going on in it. We're getting like a sparkly metallic, full pigment, full base pigment with a cool toned brown sparkly topper. That's just not what the other 2 are. It's not like the other 2 are set up in the same way. As I said, I have a lot of this type of thing. So what you're seeing on screen is everything swatched. Pause if you need to really figure out which shadow is which. This is the best I could do, but all of this will end on a freeze frame to give you a better look at each thing in a brighter light. I just wanted to show you the effect of all of these eyeshadows glistening in different lighting and different blurring, so you could just see everything just as clear as possible in this kind of setup. So on the far right, we have all of the Patrick Ta versions. We have the bottom top and it layered with the darker one on bottom. And as we go left, we have Chantecaille Elephant, which isn't really close at all. Chantecaille Elephant's a warm taupe, and these are definitely decidedly cooler taupes. And then we have Smoky Quartz, which I think is basically something in between the layered version and just the top of the Patrick Ta eyeshadow. So something very similar, and I could build up Smoky Quartz to look more like it layered, but it's basically the same thing. And I would also say its sparkle factor is very similar. Then if you go 2 more to the left, that is Mink from Victoria Beckham, and I think that that is like basically a dead-on ringer. The only thing that Mink is missing is the multicolor sparkle that the bottom shade of the Patrick Ta duo has, which I don't particularly need, but if that's something you need, just know that Mink doesn't have that, but it does have a strong sparkle silver top. And then if you go over a couple more, we have some shades from Ethereal Eyes. So there's the one brown metallic shade swatched by itself, which I think is pretty similar to the bottom shade of the Patrick Ta duo, except it does not have the multi-dimensional sparkle, but does have a sparkle in it. And then to the left, you have one of the topper shades from the Ethereal Eyes original palette. And I feel that that doesn't look a lot like the topper from Patrick Ta, but whenever you layer them, which is the one to the left of that, you get something that looks really, really similar. And then on the far left, we have some ones from Natasha Denona's I Need a Nude palette. And I would say that those definitely don't sparkle as much, but if you were looking for a more subdued version of what Patrick Ta is offering, like this is too much sparkle and you want something a little more demure, I think that the Natasha Denona kind of formula is going to be more your speed. So that's just a little bit of a comparison thing. So like I said, I didn't really need this to satisfy this kind of thing in my makeup collection. This is another one that I intended to buy because I really liked the look of the top shade, which was kind of like a champagne flips to pink kind of shade, which I think is a really popular kind of shade. I keep thinking that I like that more than I do because I think that Zebra from Chantecaille is a similar idea, but that has more of a base pigment to it. And then there's that shifty champagne gold on the bottom as well. It just has more of the gold to it, but it still flips a little bit pink. pink. Now, both of these I think are very similar in formula. They are really beautiful sparkle toppers, but I also don't find them to be unique. I think any kind of like sheer based eyeshadow in a palette, and I don't even know what to tell you. Like it could be like a normal eyeshadow brand. Like I'm thinking like a topper in Anastasia from Makeup by Mario, any kind of topper from any brand that you've ever encountered is going to be very similar to these. And it's not to say that they're not pretty. It's not to say that they didn't work well for me, but it's not giving me anything that I couldn't find elsewhere. It is such basic topper. I think what a lot of us were hoping for was that incredibly textured topper kind of look that we get from the Urban Decay Moondust eyeshadows. And I just don't think that these provide that. I think that the topper in the first one I talked about does kind of have that vibe, but I don't think either one of these ones does. And so therefore I'm left with these toppers, which are really beautiful, but they're not anything special. I think even NARS could make a topper like that is like shiny and beautiful. I think for this particular duo, it really matters the lighting, what effect you're going to get, because I find that when I'm putting them onto my vanity with all the light hitting me in front and it's a lot of light, I don't think that they look particularly special. I think that there is something that you see in the low light that you're not getting in like brighter lights, but also that's not how most rooms are lit. Like most rooms are lit overhead if you're out and about, unless you're like wearing it for a date night and you're going to like a restaurant that has like beautiful, sexy, low lighting, which at that point you might see something more special, but something more like the topper in the first duo would pick up that light faster than these would. Like light has to just be singularly directly on the eyeshadow for it to give you that beautiful glossy sheen that I feel like was promised. The shimmers in this one are not as piecey as the shimmers that I feel like they look like in the blurry footage. When I show you shimmers, I show you that blur just to show you the sparkles. And sometimes in that blurry footage, you can see sparkles that like your eye doesn't really catch very easily, at least whenever you're trying to show it on camera. I just feel like this one was like the biggest letdown of all of them. If I had just bought this one, I would have given these a very bad review. I don't think that this one in particular is worth $42 because I think you could very easily find a very inexpensive shimmer somewhere else. And I haven't tried those e.l.f. eyeshadows, but I have to imagine they're not going to be dupes, but like it's going to give you a very similar effect of what these will, because I've heard that the e.l.f. ones aren't really a dupe of the Moondust eyeshadows. And I would say that that's kind of like, if you were thinking about these similarly, this would not satisfy that kind of thing. If you were interested in talk to my team specifically, I would highly encourage you to look other places for this kind of experience. I think that still at the club, if you don't have anything like that and you're really into it, or if you are really into it already and you would want more of that in your collection, I think that this could be worth the $42 to some people. I don't think it is, because I think I have stuff that is better than this in my collection, even though it is like the shades that I like. I do apologize. The nature of this type of formula is a lot sheerer, so it's going to be a little harder to see, and my lineup gets better again whenever it's in the freeze frame. So what we're looking at here is some footage of a bunch of other topper shimmery things, and as you can see, in the blurry footage specifically, how less sparkly the Patrick Ta shadows are compared to some of the other things that we have going on. So compared to Space Cowboy, you can see that Space Cowboy has a little bit more chunkiness to it, and the glitter sparkles are more diverse in size and a little more scattered looking, whereas what we have going on with Patrick Ta is very smooth. I would say of the formulas that we are looking at here, the Astral Ghost Orchid shade from Pat McGrath, I think is the most similar to what we're seeing in this Patrick Ta duo. Everything else I have in here is more sparkly, but has the same level of sheerness and topperiness to it. I would also say the VR Pink shade is kind of close to the bottom shade of the Patrick Ta duo. It has more pigment to it, and it also is like obviously not the same kind of duochrome, but I think that that formula is similar. In the baked shades from Pat McGrath, I think you'll find similar formulas to this. Now, not every baked Pat McGrath formula is the same, and we'll see that shortly. But as far as what we're looking at here, the more smooth Pat McGrath baked shades are going to be very similar to the Patrick Ta one. So if you like that formula and want more, perhaps this duo will suit you. But if you're looking for something more sparkly, like anything else going on my arm here, then this Patrick Ta duo will, in fact, disappoint you. But if you're just looking for something shiny to put on your lids, it should be okay. I even think that the Natasha Denona shades we have here, especially the ones from the I Need a Nude palette, I think that they are even more sparkly than these Patrick Ta ones. Now, again, the lighting will really affect how sparkly things look. I just think that this duo in particular from Patrick Ta is less interesting, more of a disappointment. I just don't care for this one as much. So let's finish off with the thing that ruined everything for Patrick. This is the duo in Do You Know Who I Am? And this is two different gold toppers. And in the footage at the beginning of the video, I showed you that when I opened this one, I could immediately tell that this was not the same thing as Talk to My Team. I don't think that the shades are named individually. So it's just like there's a top shade and the bottom shade. I think that this top shade is the most special of the 6 shades that I got to try. There's just something to it. And when I swatch it, it feels like there's just a lot of dimension to it. Like I actually think that lives up to that major dimension claim. It's just so gorgeous. I don't wear a lot of gold. I don't think it's not pretty on me. Gold doesn't go with a lot of the clothing that I wear. I feel like it does clash a little bit with my skin tone. So it's just like not my favorite eyeshadow color to put on my eye. It's not to say that it's ugly, because I definitely think that this is the prettiest one of the ones that I got. The bottom shade is just kind of like more warm of a gold, and I like it quite a bit less. Like I didn't like that shade as much as all, but I do think that the formula is the same. So I think it gives a similar effect to the top shade, but it's not a shade that I like as much as the top shade. I just think that the top shade is like the one to me, the one where it's at. And I think that these do perform as toppers, and I think that they have that multi-dimensionality. It feels like some of the shimmer is larger particles, some of it's smaller particles, and I always feel like that is the thing that makes the makeup look like it's dancing on your eyes whenever light hits it. And I think in all lighting, this looked really pretty. When I was putting it on in my vanity, when I was out and about, I feel like I got compliments on it in the videos that I've been wearing it in. Like, I just think that this is the one. And it's so funny because I never would have bought this one. And I almost didn't even open it when it came to my house because I was like, oh, I'm just going to send that one back. I don't even know what Patrick Ta's brand would do with it if I sent it back. I don't know if they would sell it again. I don't know if they would open it to look at it to see if I didn't use it. And it does say that they accept gently used products. And I didn't want to use it and then return it. I just felt like I had to really get into this one to get to know it because it just looked so different from the one I actually wanted. I think of the 3 duos that I tried, that this one would be the most worth your money. If that is what you're looking for, is that intense sparkle, I think that this one provides it the most. I think this is exactly what Patrick Ta told us it was going to be. This duo is really it. It's just unfortunate that it's only in this gold color story. As you can see, this is a texture that I really, really enjoy, and you can find a lot in my collection. I think the formula that I have that is closest to it in texture and feel IRL are the Pat McGrath shades. So the Astral Luna Gold, the Rose Gold, and the Astral Solstice. If you're familiar with Pat McGrath, but you don't really pay attention, these are the flakier Pat McGrath shades. And I think that's what really gives them that beautiful, sparkly, dance on the eyes kind of look. I am also sorry I don't have any of the vanity lighting shots because all of the shots that I took were out of focus and I didn't realize until I was in here editing, and it was really hard to see them out of focus, especially if we weren't looking at the sparkle. I also think some of my Cliona shades have that interesting texture. This is just a texture that I really like. And it's also kind of hard to find in the major market unless you're buying a Pat McGrath palette. So I think it's cool that this duo has this kind of texture in it. It is just a bummer that that's not the texture across the board. And according to Pat McGrath, it can be done. Like, it's like you can make those different golds or silvers and have those really beautiful looks to it. I just don't like that none of the formulas were the same. I also think you can get a really beautiful similar look from those Phytosurgeons eyeshadows. They don't really look it in this footage, but I feel like whenever I put them on my actual eyes, it gives a very similar effect to the eyeshadows in this particular duo. So yeah, it's not a unique formula, I don't think. I believe him that like he went through a whole process and made a slurry because it is like a nice formula, but it doesn't mean that it's not a texture you can't find in shades you might like more and in formulas that you might already have. So just don't be duped by this. You might already have this in your collection. It just might not look exactly the same. And finally, I just wanted to show you all three of the duos swatched next to each other. As you can see, the biggest dud of a shade, in my opinion, is the dark brown from the brown duo. And then you can see the three shimmers on the right are so much more sparkly than the two shimmers on the left. And I would even say the shimmer on the far right is a little bit more lackluster than the two next to it. It's such a shame that they're not all the same thing, because if they were all the sparkly ones in the three right shades, I would have been just so pleased. I really wish that all 6 of the shadows that I got would have been the same thing. And I would have been so happy. And I think I would have been more confident to recommend them to you if that's what I got. But that's not what I got. And I feel like all of this justification about the cost of them, how much product that they put in them, etc., they knew what you were going to get wasn't going to be what the fantasy that was sold to us was. So I think that the marketing and the way that they launched these was an absolute failure. I don't think that the product is a failure, but it's basically that meme of what I thought I bought and what actually showed up are two different things. And that's exactly what happened. And I got what I think ultimately are 6 beautiful eyeshadows. I didn't get the 6 eyeshadows that I thought I was going to get. And that in lies the problem. I think that these eyeshadows perform very well. I do think that you should do your eyeshadow first because of the amount of sparkle in them. I do get a little bit of fallout, so I have been doing my eyeshadow first when I have been using them. And I do think that some of it falls off the eye a little bit throughout the day. So like you have to kind of be okay with that. But with glitter glue, they last all day. I hadn't had any longevity issues with them, and they didn't really crease that much on me. So I think like they're a pretty good formula of eyeshadow. I do think that they are a higher quality eyeshadow from like what you probably would get in a regular eyeshadow palette, especially with shimmers. Sometimes shimmers I feel like are more inclined to crease, and I think that these perform very well. I think that they remind me a lot of the performance of my Chantecaille eyeshadows, which are like a beautiful baked shimmery formula. So I guess that makes a lot of sense. So that they all kind of like go together and kind of perform very similarly. Knowing what I know now, I wouldn't have bought all 3. This is absolutely something that if you were interested in these, I think it's worth going to swatch them in store just to make sure the duo that you want is also going to have the finish that you want, because not all of them are built the same. This is what I heard in passing from a friend. They told me that 2 people with the same duo swatched their duos together and the finishes looked different between the same duo. I can't speak to there being inconsistencies even within the same shades across the duos, but all I can say is that I definitely tried 6 different eyeshadows, and I would say that I also tried 5 different formulas across the 6 eyeshadows. I think a lot of what's happening is the strong, good reaction to these that I think we're seeing on TikTok is happening a lot from people who got it in PR. Obviously, as someone who gets PR, I try to be as honest as I can. There's always going to be bias in a review, of course, like the way you apply your makeup, what you're looking for out of the thing, etc. But I do feel like the people who got them in PR without the buy-in of the $42 or even, I didn't even have to pay that much for them. I paid like the $30 that I paid for them each. Without that buy-in, yeah, they're really pretty eyeshadows, but like the people you're selling these to are they have a much higher buy-in than you. And then I think that people who are buying one of the duos and just trying one of the duos and reviewing one of the duos is certainly reviewing that duo, and I think they're reviewing it well, but they also don't understand, if they only bought one, how different they are. And like, I'm sure that they might have seen reviews otherwise, but I feel like the TikTok version of the review is like absolutely great. Now, I haven't watched other people's reviews on these. I know I'm like the last person to do a review on these Patrick Ta eyeshadows. I saw Lauren May Beauty post an hour-long video on these eyeshadows, and I said, something's up, because Lauren May Beauty is not out here posting hour-long videos all the time. Her videos are normally like a tight 20 minutes if she's doing a review. So I was like, something's going on. I effed around and found out myself. I know that Teresa was really unimpressed with the duo she bought, which was Talk to My Team. And I messaged her immediately. I said, girl, they are not all the same. They all look very, very different. I don't think that these are worth $42. I think if he sold them as singles, told us what the finishes were and what the expectation should be of the finish of each one, I think that all of us would be much happier, because I would have bought the one shade ultimately that I would have wanted, and I would have stopped there. I wouldn't have 6 of these in front of me. But now I have 6 eyeshadows and I'm only really interested in 3 of them, but I don't like the colors of 2 of the 3 that I like. I think a $30 single would be much better. I think if you just went the route of the Charlotte Tilbury hypnotizing pop shots, I think that everyone would be happier because those are $34. And I really like smoky quartz, but I really like smoky quartz. And I was able to buy smoky quartz because that was the one that looked the most compelling to me. I did buy the blue one at one point and I didn't like it as much. And like that was on me. That wasn't on Charlotte Tilbury. I made the decision to buy the blue one. Anyway, if you happen to be new to my channel, thank you so much for watching this video. I would love to have you subscribe. I like to help myself and help you be more discerning about the makeup purchases that we're buying. And if that sounds good to you, stick around. I have channel memberships and a Patreon linked down below. That's just a different way to support me, not necessarily a better way to support me. I do an additional video over there every month. I do want to say this, if you haven't joined or you've already joined my Patreon or channel memberships and you joined through the App Store, through the app on Apple, there's now a surcharge for that for you. So I would highly recommend if you want to join mine or anyone's Patreon to do it from a computer. And that also goes for the channel memberships through the YouTube app. If you do it through youtube.com, you don't have that surcharge app. I don't know what that thing's going on with Apple. Just make sure that you're not paying that fee as well as paying me. If you like go through it and you realize that you are, I would understand if like you like leave and come back or if you leave and don't come back. I just wanted you to know that because I think that's a change that's about to happen or recently happened. I am subscribed to a couple people on YouTube. And if you look on the app, it's more expensive than if you look on the computer to be members of those people. Thank you to all my current members and patrons. You're the absolute best. I really appreciate your support that way. I'm on Instagram at hautemesstom. You can check me out there if you want. You'll see some additional content. But that's going to wrap up the video. DomTop86, he's at the door. So I'm just getting the back door. If you go through the laundry room, the back doors, I'm coming up. The back door's over. The back door's over. And you can just see yourself out.